I had I think a very average childhood as far as grade school. I was a good student. I was eighth grade class president. Went to high school. Was in student council, vice president of my class. I was a smart kid. Ended up being captain of my football team. Yeah. I have a good laugh because usually when I do a presentation or I talk to people, I will say, most transgender women, if they could go back in time, would just love to be able to go to the prom with the captain of the football team. The only problem is I was the captain of the football team.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
And was there a lot of confusion at that time, being the captain of a football team or being engaged in those, just in high school at that age in general? There's all kinds of hormonal things and social interactions between, in a love-sex way.
Yep.
So was there confusion on your part? I mean, to be the captain of the football team, you had to have had a certain amount of confidence at the same time as you had this perception of yourself. So can you talk a little about that?
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting because I met a girl when I was 13, and we ended up starting to go together at 16, and she would eventually become my first wife. We went together for all through college. I guess a year after we graduated from college, she moved in.
And so you have always been, and I guess still are, attracted to women.
I was going to say in a big way. In a big way. Yeah, I have never been interested in men. Never, it just didn't.
So people need to understand that being transgender has zero to do with being attracted to men or women.
Right. Well, again, we talked about those 4 categories, and they're distinct categories.
Right.
So people will say to me, "Oh, well, you're the way you are because you want to attract men." And really, to be perfectly honest with you, no. I don't know how and why this all works out, but I can tell you that I and many other transgender women are not interested in men. It's just the way it is.
You're the way you are because you're the way you are.
Exactly.
You are who you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I interrupted you. You were saying something about the high school.
Right. Well, I mean, my situation was, so I started going out with my first wife as a junior in high school, and we went to the prom together, the homecoming dance. I mean, we had a great teenage years. My high school years were probably the best years of my life. We went to college. I went to Rutgers University and in engineering school. So during this period of time, I continued to go out with my wife, but I was with 3 or 4 other guys, depending on the year, sharing a 2-room apartment.
And you were comfortable with yourself during this period, or did you feel just there was so?
There was this thing,
but it wasn't manifest as it didn't come into focus yet.
No. As I got older, I became more aware of it, and
you're okay with me asking this?
Absolutely,
okay, good.
Absolutely. My drive to dress, and that's really where it started. Probably around maybe 10 years old, because I was the oldest child in my family. I was the built-in babysitter, so my parents would go, the kids would be put to bed, and then I had my mother's clothes available to me. So from the age of probably 10 to 15, I was doing a lot of cross-dressing whenever I had the opportunity to do it. And again, didn't understand it. And one of the things that I felt was because there was no way of knowing what this was all about, in my mind, it was sort of like, well, God made a mistake. I don't see anyone else like me. And so,
did you perceive yourself as a woman at the time, or it was just this other thing, and
it
you
was
didn't
this
think
other
in
thing.
that term?
It was, I know who I am, and I was comfortable with who I am. Yeah. Not defined as male or female.
Right, the self.
The self, right, exactly. I was able to, shall we say, negotiate the cisgender world without too much trouble because I appeared to be a cisgender heterosexual man, so there was no big deal. But as I got older, it became more of a pull, if you will. So I stopped dressing pretty much in my later stages of high school because now I had a girlfriend, and it just wasn't as important. And of course, being a teenage male, I had, you know, all my efforts and focus was on girls. You know, girls and sports and driving cars. That was really it.
Pretty typical.
You know, pretty typical. So
And
high
it was
school.
and it was the 70s. This was the 70s.
Yeah, early 70s.
Okay, so
Late 60s, early
I think
70s.
people ought to keep in mind also that as you're going through this period, it's the 70s,
Right.
and there is not, you know, there were different perceptions in the 70s.
Oh, absolutely. Well, one of the things that had a big impact on me, because for the first time in my life, I found a word that almost seemed related to me, and that was, my parents used to get Newsweek every week, the magazine. And one week it came out as, and I don't remember exactly what the name of the article was, but it was something like, you know, the transgender phenomena, or that was the transsexual phenomena.
I was going to ask you about that.
It wasn't
word.
transgender,
So
it was
I'm glad you
transsexual.
brought that word up,
Right.
because I was remembering it, and I'm in my memory. I'm not sure if until you brought it up that's a word that was used for cross-dressing, or that was a word for sex change.
And it was sex change. So I read the article and it's like, oh my God, there's something about this
It
thing.
resonates. This is
It resonates,
resonating.
exactly. But again, I don't know anything, and it's not, we have to remember that in those days, there is no internet.
Right.
You couldn't just say, you know, guy wanting to wear clothes, or, you know, there was no place to go. So this was probably, I don't know, maybe my senior year in high school. And I read the article, and it said, you know, transsexuals are people who literally are going through operations to change their body into women, and they're driven to do this.
Yada,
Yada,
was
yada.
this pre-Renee Richards? And
About maybe just a hair before it,
who
but
was,
not a
who
lot.
was before? It was one or two.
Oh, it was, well, there were a couple things, but the famous GI that came back from, I guess it was overseas in like 51, I think it was. And it's going to take me a second, and I can't remember the name. Christine Jorgensen.
That's who I'm thinking.
Christine Jorgensen. Christine Jorgensen was the big story. And then in the early 70s, as you point out, Renee Richards became a name.
Right, and these were thought of, I guess, as anomalies, at least by us cisgender people.
Right, exactly. Well, everyone, because no one knew who was out there.
Including the people who really are transgender, had this perception of, they did or they didn't have this perception of themselves. I guess there's confusion, but
Right.
maybe coming into focus a tiny bit.
Well, just the fact that there was an article in a national magazine that I was able to read. And I always remember there was a sentence in there somewhere along the side that said, now this is not to be confused with transvestites who like to wear women's clothing.
That's cross-dressing.
Exactly. Well, but they weren't talking about it as cross-dressing. They were talking about it as transvestites, which was a name that was being used
And is
in
that
the
a
50s.
derogatory term?
It is now, pretty much.
Okay.
It is now.
Okay.
It's interesting how language changes, and even now, and we may
But
talk a little bit
it's
about that.
important to understand the nuances so that we don't hurt people.
Right.
So that we
Exactly.
can be accepting of people who they are and meet them where they're at.
Exactly. Exactly. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do.
Exactly.
Here.
So anyway, so that was like, well, that sounds like me a little bit, but now I had some words, and because I was a good student, I was able to get to the library books that no one else can read. That was why I loved my high school. I was, you know, I could walk down the hallway and never, you know, the principal would walk right by me. Hello, how are you? I'm doing fine, thank you. Not even question, why aren't you in class? Because I was always doing something. They just left me alone, and I did really well there. It was a great time in my life. Anyway, so I started getting a little bit of information, and some of it sounded like me, but some of it didn't, and I couldn't really place it. So,
Do you mind if I ask where you grew up?
sure, Northwestern Jersey.
Where?
Hunterdon County.
Hunterdon County. Okay,
Yeah.
I know it.
Yeah.
That's
Hunterdon
Route,
County.
Route 78, maybe?
Well, Route 78 runs right through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, by the
Del Water Gap.
Delaware Water Gap. Yeah, that was west of us.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so that area, and that's cow country. So again, that's the other
It's
problem
pretty
is
rural.
that, yeah, it's not like, oh, I was a kid in Manhattan and I could see, you know, drag queens and this and that. There was nothing out there. So, you know, you're really almost blind just trying to feel your way through this.
I guess
kind
the
of
library
situation.
would be a big thing.
Right, and there wasn't a whole lot there either. So that was, but at least it helped. Moved us into high school, into college rather, and went into engineering school. And boy, at least for me, I went to Rutgers University, and being in engineering school, at least the first couple of years, it's like being pre-med or something. I mean, they just beat
intensive
the heck
study.
out of you. Yeah. So there's a certain degree of stress that I feel, and I'm feeling like it's starting to leak out of me a little bit. Now this is interesting because I'm actually living with 3 other guys in a 2-room apartment. But what ends up happening is somewhere along the line of I'm again gauging my time of being 20. I finally came out to my girlfriend and said, I don't know what this is, but this is what it is.
Did she have any idea?
No, but it was leaking out, type of situation.
And I guess there could have been a distance between you, maybe. I don't know. Was there?
No, not really. She knew that I seemed to be awfully interested, and her mother was an Avon salesperson, so there was always samples around and this and that, and it just...
And you took an interest.
Yeah, it was an interest. So she handled it okay. It was... if you asked her, what her favorite moment from our time together, it was probably me being captain of the football team, coming off the field after a big win, and I'm just coated in sweat and dirt and everything else. And she came off the stands and, hugged me, and I was probably smelly and dirty, but this, super hyper masculine person coming off, she loved that. And during college, of course, I grew a full beard. I had a beard like a Brillo pad, type of thing.
Wow.
And she loved everything about that. So this was like a funky little thing that she kind of put up with. But as it progressed, I ended up having, this closet in this 2-room apartment with a suitcase with a lock on it, with all my stuff in that suitcase, and they never knew that it was there. It was just a suitcase that I had up in the corner.
Kind of a good metaphor that this
Yeah.
you were locked away
Yes,
in a way.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
And the only time I could use it was when everybody was away. And it was interesting for me, to go through that. So get through college, graduate, get a job right out of college with a Fortune 500 company, which is really great. And had some a couple of little bills to pay for, and a couple of medical issues to take care of, and a couple of dental things to take care of. But I'm now an independent person making money, a young professional, if you will, and
Successful.
I mean, I got a job.
But I mean,
Fortune 500,
successful in
yeah.
that you're independent and
Yeah.
you're living your own life,
Yeah.
and you've achieved what a lot of people want to achieve.
Right, exactly. So I feel like I'm on the road. This is the beginning of my career. So one of the things that I want to do is I want to go to somebody and take care of that thing. The thing.
Mm-hmm.
I want to take care of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I happened to see an ad in the Village Voice. Now, not everybody probably even knows what the Village Voice was, but at the time it was a weekly newspaper that came out, and on the back page there were all these like want ads and stuff, and I caught one of the ads saying, transvestites, transsexuals, guidance, help, support.
And there was an alternative feel to the
Yes,
Village Voice.
yes.
It was I got the combination of West Village, I guess not so much East Village at the time, but downtown Manhattan, very kind of bohemian.
Yes.
Politically pretty much to the left.
Creative, artistic.
And an open mind.
Yes. Very much.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So I make an appointment and I go to see Garrett Oppenheimer was the gentleman's name.
A doctor?
Oh, he was as I understand it, he was a psychologist.
Okay.
And he was starting this organization, Confide, to lend support to what would eventually be called the transgender community. So I remember going to see him, and I'm, it's a little weird, because now you're really going to a stranger to talk about this thing
Stuff.
that you've been dealing with for all your life, but have never, other than your girlfriend, someday going to be your wife person, other than that, this is the first time you're telling a stranger about it.
And you kind of don't totally know what it is.
No, exactly. That's exactly right.
He's going to help you investigate this, man.
Right. Well, what I'm there for, because he says, well, so why are you here? Nervous, was, so why are you here? And I'm like, well, it's very simple. I want to be cured of this thing. I want to get it finished, get it over with, do whatever I have to do, get this thing done so that I can move on with my life. Mm-hmm. And he goes, well, I'm sorry to tell you, this is something that you're going to have for the rest of your life. This is part of you. You'll never be away from it. Now you can make yourself go away from it, but most likely you're going to have issues because you're trying to deny that it's there. The most successful people that I've seen are people who learn to have this somehow become part of their life, deal with it openly, embrace it, and they seem to be the people that are the happiest. So I was like, okay.